great time to start. Thank you everyone who's joining us. You are here at Establishing Community in a Remote Learning Environment, where we are going to talk very briefly with some folks from CAST, and then we will leave plenty of time at the end for questions if anyone has questions they'd like to ask. We're going to provide some really useful information, hopefully, and not overwhelm anyone during this kind of crazy time right now. So let's start with some introductions. Melissa, Sam, would you mind introducing yourselves, and then I'll just introduce myself?
Sure. My name is Melissa Sanjay. I'm a member of CAST Professional Learning Team, and I work primarily with teams in New Hampshire to implement UDL in their school sites, but also I work across the country with different teams in different schools and districts.
Great, thanks.
And I'm Sam Johnston, and I direct our post-secondary and workforce development efforts at CAST, and have a background in online and with mixed face-to-face teaching. So I'm happy to help answer some questions in the chat and provide some answers if I have them, or go find them for you if I don't.
Awesome. And I am Amanda Bastoni, formerly a New Hampshire CTE teacher, and then a New Hampshire CTE director, and I live in New Hampshire, so very, very connected to the state. So we thought we would really just start with a question that's on everyone's mind. I don't have experience, or I have very little experience teaching online. What should I do first? I think that's a really key question, and we thought about it a lot, and it seems like what you should do first is make sure to keep it simple, ask for help when you need it, and really remember that relationships are the key. So don't forget that all the things you did as a teacher in the classroom are still essential for you to do now that we're moving online or remotely, really, because some of us will not have the opportunity to go online. But so when we're teaching remotely or we're teaching online, we want to carry those same keys with us. We want to remember that relationships are really the key, and we need to keep it simple. And then we're talking, and we want to make sure that we really don't forget about each other. So check in with your fellow teachers, make sure they're doing okay. Teachers need support at this time too. And we're going to actually watch a video from a teacher. So I do want to preface this. This is my husband. He is a woodshop teacher in New Hampshire. And he's pretty goofy, but that's part of his classroom strategy and the way he builds culture. What we're going to do is watch this video. It's 1.5 minutes. It's his first assignment. And then we'll really just use this video as a launching off place to talk about how do we continue to create culture when we're doing remote learning. So let's all watch.
Good morning. I'm here to give you some Woodshop Online starting today, March 18th. So today,
Amanda, we lost audio when you muted.
So the daily question today is, what is your favorite board or card game and why? Let's see it up on the board. Oh, got to do our breathing. So we're going to stop real quick, and we're going to close our eyes, and we're going to breathe out. We're going to breathe in. And we're going to breathe out. Now, everybody, you can answer the question, what is your favorite board or card game and why? Your answers are due by 7 p.m. so I can figure out if everybody has a Google Classroom or not, and whether or not they're partaking. So answer the question, type a line, tell us why. I don't want an electronic answer, like you got to answer electronically, but it can't be an electronic answer. So you can't say Fortnite, Fortnite Friends Online, you'll get 0. It's worth 3 million points. 3 million points. It's really hard not to look at the little picture of me right now. We're going to get through this together, me and you. So signing out from Peterborough, New Hampshire, Mr. Ewing, what is your favorite board game and why? See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
Oh, we don't need to watch them again. So great. So I wanted to show that video for a couple of reasons, or we wanted to show that video for a couple of reasons. And one is, when we think about taking our community and moving it remotely or moving it online, we need to remember there are structures that we have had in place in our classrooms that can continue to work. We need to adapt them to remote learning. One example here is Mr. Ewing does a daily question every day. So he decided to start with that daily question for the first assignment. So what are some structures that we can hang on to as we make that transition from the classroom into our remote learning environments? And we want to make sure we really communicate those, we hang on to the ones that are working. And as you can see, we hang on to our goofy sense of humor as well. So we also want to make sure we communicate that structure very clearly to students. You know, in some ways, Mr. Ewing did a great job of that. He told them when the assignment was going to be due. We just want to make sure that structures are clear and we're hanging on to structures that we've used in the classroom. Sam and Melissa, any thoughts on that, this idea of like, how do we adapt our structures?
Sam here. I think one thing I would say is, you know, you're not going to be able to replicate all your structures. None of us can do everything we did before. Many of us now have 2 full-time jobs if we didn't already, right? Our kids are home. If we have them, we may be taking care for ailing parents. We may just be consumed by what's going on. The key thing, I think, is taking those structures right now. This isn't, you know, hopefully not overly long term, but this isn't, you know, we're thinking about right now, you're kind of having to almost start anew. What are the structures that really help you establish a relationship and trust with the kids in your classroom who really need you now? You're still the skilled person that you were a week ago. You have been thrown a lot of curveballs. But what are the 2 or 3 structures that you use that you know help you have a relationship with your students? Those are probably the ones you most want to think about. What might I do to adapt those to this new setting? Who can help me think about how to adapt those to this new setting? Maybe I could ask my kids what they think we should do as a daily check-in. So it's really not about taking everything. It's really just about taking a couple things that matter to you and likely really matter to your kids, and trying to bring them into this environment, because their relationship with you is really an important thing that they don't want to lose. And my guess is you don't want to lose it either.
Great, thank you, Sam. Melissa, any thoughts before we move on to our next slide?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that Sam said, and also add that maybe if you think about, we've been talking in the PL team about predictable supports. So you think about what do your students count on? What are those supports that they count on? And maybe just adapting 1 or 2 of those. You can't take everything from the classroom and put it online, but the things that are most important to maintaining those relationships with your students, I think would be the ones to choose.
Great, perfect. Okay, so moving along. So one structure that a lot of teachers have is breaking students into small groups and thinking about creating community within their classroom by doing that. When it's appropriate, it might make sense to create a learning buddy, someone that your students have to check in with online or remotely. I'm going to turn this over to Sam and ask her if there are some concrete ways or some concrete ideas she could give us for using that structure of breaking students into small groups to continue to develop community.
Yeah, Sam here. So, you know, there's many ways to think about breaking students up into small groups online. So you've obviously lost the kind of physical layout of your classroom where you can put, you know, this group in this corner and that group in there, and, you know, think about how that happens in a face-to-face brick and mortar environment. But you can do things even now that are pretty simple. So if you took your class list, for example, say you wanted to have students, get on Google Classroom if your district uses that and have a discussion, you could take your class list and subdivide students into A to D, alphabetically. You got smaller, so you're creating smaller groups that are kind of organized. And you're maybe getting students into conversations that weren't in conversations before. You could use the same grouping structures you might have used before to divide people and put people into a discussion together, or get on a chat, or do some group work and have different assignments. One thing that's important is if you're using collaborative documents like Google Doc, it really at this point is very important to have your students put their names beside their contributions if the technology doesn't track that, because it's going to be really important for two reasons. One, you're going to know who said what and who did what, but it's also going to tell you right now if it's going to be one way of telling you if your students have barriers to actually being able to participate at all. So that's sort of one thing that's can be really helpful. But just sort of taking some of the existing things you have for organization right now and using those to help you subdivide students. The other thing I would say is just giving students some sense of, okay, what am I supposed to do if we're broken into small groups? You may need to look at, what you asked students to do before. Did you divide them into roles? Did they all have sort of separate jobs? How might you think about adapting those to online? And then again, kind of communicating clearly with them what they're being asked to do and giving them kind of a clear timeline around what you're asking.
Melissa, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the one thing I would add, this is Melissa speaking. The one thing I would add is that I really loved about the woodshop teacher, how the first task was something that was low stakes and not necessarily about woodshop. So maybe as I get used to these new groupings or communicating with one another via the internet or text message, the first couple interactions can be sort of low stakes and something fun, and just to get them used to doing that new thing in that new way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is Amanda speaking. Really great point, Melissa. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next slide that we have for you, we have 4 points, just our collective 4 thoughts about communication. Communication being the key to really starting to build culture in the classroom. So one sort of place to start is really to think about what is being used currently in the district. So what's being used in the district, what's being used by teachers in the school, and then think of that as the basis for really starting to deliver your learning and your content. Maybe not exactly the time to try a brand new technology out. You may struggle to understand it, and then that could be a struggle for the students. For example, the woodshop teacher that we just saw originally made his video on a tool called Loom, but then couldn't figure out how to share it, couldn't figure out how to make it accessible and have captioning, so went back to YouTube. So I really think it's important to know what your district is using and to really start there. And then it's important to think about how do we provide students with a structure of communication for what is going to happen. So how have you already been telling them about what's happening during the day, what your expectations are? But just really realizing that as they're moving online, or learning remotely, as Sam said, some students are going to be taking care of younger siblings. People are going to be coming in and out while they're trying to do webinars. And so it's really important to think about having very clear structures for communication. So Sam or Melissa, any thoughts on these 2 points? And then we'll make 2 more and then we're almost done, guys. We're good? Okay, so let's go on to the next 2. So it's really important, as we talked about, to really have a plan. So as you saw in the video from the woodshop teacher, from Abe, he told them when the assignment was going to be due, what he was asking for from them. So it's really important to make sure that students understand, as Sam said, what their expectations are, if you give them a role, when they will be meeting, who they'll be meeting with. it might be a good time to really think about who you can loop in. I know in some districts, paras are continuing to offer support. So really thinking about reaching out to paras, special educators, to keep that structure consistent and make sure that they're looped in and aware of what's happening. And lastly, and I think this is really important, not just for our webinar, you know, Abe did a great job of speaking very slowly and clearly, but pace is extremely important right now. Melissa, I loved how you brought up that Abe gave a low stakes first assignment, because we really don't want to be overwhelming folks, right? I mean, I don't know how many folks are receiving in their Facebook feed so much, you know, information, free materials. The students are receiving the same thing, the parents are receiving the same thing. We really want to make sure that the pace of information we're giving students right now, at least, is thoughtful and small bites. So maybe Sam and Melissa, any thoughts on these 4 points so far?
Yes, I agree. This is Melissa speaking. I agree, Amanda, that sometimes less is more, because if you're getting overwhelmed with everything that you have to do for the next 4 weeks, it's going to be hard to sort of manage your time and your emotions. So giving them out in little bite-sized pieces, if your delivery system at your school allows that, might be the best option.
Yeah, it's a great point. Even, you know, as Abe was saying in that video, this is Amanda speaking. So even as Abe was saying in that video, maybe just asking for a very simple first assignment that'll allow you to see who's kind of able to respond on time, you know, which students are maybe experiencing some barriers to responding, and you're not, you know, he did say 3 million points, I think, but you're not really giving them something that is going to cause them a lot of stress at this time if they're still learning to create structures within their own family, right, for turning that material in. So, okay, so how can we give students choice? We know that it's really essential to so many things, but to increasing engagement and to making sure students feel part of the class and the community, to give them choice around how they participate and or, you know, how they turn materials in, how they respond. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa at this point to maybe weigh in on how we can think about giving students choice as a way to build culture when we move into remote learning.
So often, some of these platforms that we use have different ways that you can participate. So for now, we have folks can participate by typing into the chat. Sometimes we have where folks can participate by speaking out loud, and you might consider doing the same for your students. They have an option to talk on the Zoom call or type in the chat. They have an option to record themselves in the Google Doc where they're communicating, or to type things in. And you may even go so far as to give them an option to get in contact with me X number of times a week, and you can do so via these 3 things. You can text me, you can send me an email, you can give me a phone call, you can get contact with me through Google Classroom, whatever your options are for communicating with your students. Maybe you give them a way to do that, either speaking or written, so that they can engage more that way.
Great, thank you so much. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this? We're good?
No, I think that's great.
Okay, awesome. Good, so the last 2 slides are some additional resources. So we've shared the bit.ly with you, so you can use the hyperlinks that are built in. We will also have this webinar, it's being recorded, so we will share it on Learning Design. Learning Design is a platform that CAST is offering to New Hampshire as a way to bring teachers together to communicate. So if you join, it's free. You can share your concerns, share your thoughts. We will be doing webinars like this on a regular basis, as well as some office hours where we can take direct questions. But in relationship to this webinar, we will have additional resources on Learning Design. that include some tips for making videos. So, avoiding backlighting. In Abe's video, you saw a lot of shaking. So he had his laptop on a desk that moved. So maybe thinking about that. And then also when teaching live, what are some things to consider? So those will be additional resources for everyone. Putting it into practice, we will have office hours with, if you just want to hear more from Abraham Ewing, we will be having a conversation with the New England Association of Woodworking. So that conversation will be scheduled as office hours. Folks can come in, listen to practical ideas on how to teach classes such as woodshop, but hands-on classes, how to move those to remote learning. That'll be tomorrow from 11 to noon. And then if you have questions about remote instruction, we also have a hyperlink here to the New Hampshire Department of Education. Really trying to keep it simple today, just share some basics with you. If you have questions, we would love to take them in the chat, or we could engage in a conversation for a little bit, guys, if I forgot something. So any questions from folks who are listening? Okay, so no big deal. So any final thoughts, Sam or Melissa, or do we feel good about what we've created today?
No, my only final thought is reach out at any time. My email's in the Bitly. The email's in the slide deck, and so anything you need, reach out to us. Come to our office hours. Let us know what we can do.
Okay, great. Sam, any thoughts from you?
No, thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.